We light this chalice to abet creation and to witness to it, to notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play to an empty house. Words of the author, Annie Dillard. Good morning. Welcome to Cross Street Chapel, to our Sunday service, and I'm grateful for your presence here. I'm grateful whether you're here in person or if you're watching and listening in online. And I hope that whatever it is that you've come seeking into this space, be it a space of joy and laughter, of tears and sorrow, a place where you might hear a few words of wisdom, or perhaps you've come just seeking a chance to rest with the divine. Whatever you've come seeking here, I hope it will be found, as well as a warm community. As I say, we opened our worship with Annie Dillard. We turn now to our call to worship, which are from the words of another author, Kurt Vonnegut. We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful what we pretend to be. Vonnegut, always concise and mirthful. Let us gather and sing together with our first hymn, number 43. My apologies for those listening online. We normally have the words to accompany the hymns, but due to a glitch on my part, they won't be included today. But please do enjoy our singing, and if you know the words by heart, which will be really incredible, celebrate with us. As we sing our first hymn, number 43 in the Purple Book, Gather the Spirit, hymn number 43. words from the lovely singer-songwriter Jim Scott, who we had here a few years ago now. It was lovely to have him in lead worship, share his singing and his stories. Let us turn now to a time of prayer. And this is concluded with our covenant, which you can find printed in your order of worship and will appear online for those watching from home. Beautiful serendipities, these cherished coincidences which have shaped our lives, providing a lattice of meaning which supports us. Unseen, unknown, hidden among the mundane and unappreciated, which peek out at those quiet moments of divine revelation. May we recognize what has brought us here today. Not merely our physical journeys, nor those extended appreciations drawn over the reasons of many visits. May we appreciate the subtle steering that leads us to what is important, that helps to build our character, that challenges us through the rapids and protects us in the harbor. May this place be a harbor for those who have not known rest. May this place be a rapid for those wishing to challenge themselves and explore life's opportunities. For those who are lost, may it be a lighthouse. And for those who felt comfortable, may they serve as lighthouse keepers. And above all, may our vessels be sturdy, strong enough to bear the weight of diverse opinion, grand enough to hold in it that common humanity. Amen. Please read with me our covenant. We gather here in sacred fellowship to witness the fullness of our lives and all life, to hold and be held, tell stories and listen, to be renewed and renew the world. We speak with care and patience. We act with gentleness and compassion. We forgive each other and ourselves. In faith that we build beloved community, we renew our covenant today. Amen. Our first reading today comes from the Reverend John Hamilton Tom, who was a Unitarian minister in the 1800s, minister at Renshaw Street and in Tuxteth. And he was a very close friend to Dr. James Martineau. It's entitled Ecclesiastical Pretensions. The contrast in temper and in method between a church that aims at unity of spirit and a church that aims at uniformity of opinion carries us to the deepest principles of the Christian life. The one is always dropping salutary truths. The other is always denouncing what she takes for dangerous errors. The one is only anxious for the state of the affections, their purity, mercy, and sensibility. The other is always dismayed and troubled by the varieties and irregularities of religious habit, worship, and thought. The one lets fall a heavenly seed into the soul and is satisfied if it takes root and grows. The other is not satisfied whilst anything else appears above the soil, though it has no natural decay, and must be torn forth with living roots out of the bleeding heart. The one cares only for the leaven that is working in our nature. The other cares only for exact conformity to some given pattern. The one is a teacher and a fertilizer. The other is a disputer and a formalist. Christ was emphatically a teacher. He never disputed. He dropped truths which, if they took root, would quietly supplant error. He was not afraid of errors, if only healing truths and fertile affections could be introduced along with them, side by side. He solved all the controversies of his time, not by giving judgment between them, but by the development of some comprehensive principle that underlay and embraced them both, and reconciled the disputants in one wider view. From Ecclesiastical Pretensions by John Hamilton Tom. You now have a chance to share your lives, your joys and your sorrows, your trials and your triumphs. If you want to light a candle and say a few words, please come to the microphone so those using the loop system and those listening online will be able to participate. You're invited, of course, to light a candle in silence as well. And if you are online, please type into the chat box and I will read your message out for you. And if you wish to remain seated, holding your life in your heart, know that your presence here is enough. And I would like to light a candle of gratitude for everyone here, and particularly last week. If you weren't here last week, you might realize that I wasn't here last week, though I was due to be. My son Thomas had fallen ill with a tummy bug, and then my wife Catherine very quickly caught it. I managed to escape unscathed because I have a bit of an iron stomach. But it wasn't a pleasant experience, for either of them. And so I had to send in some quick apologies, and I'm grateful for everyone who managed to keep worship here, to keep a presence and keep a celebration and a time of care for one another in my absence. They always say that I'm not going anytime soon, but there's always an expression that ministers should try and leave chapels in a way so that they can carry on without them. In the same way that teachers, hope that their students will be able to further their education beyond the teacher's time. And so I felt very confident knowing that the chapel was in safe hands. So thank you.
That is a candle, and its light are for my sister and my brother-in-law. We've just heard her cancer, which she has been fighting for at least 15 years, has returned, and we've just heard that her husband, my brother-in-law, has been diagnosed with dementia. So we are thinking of them both and admiring their fights and their battles and their positivity, and we're there for them.
I'm Margaret. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm here with my husband and my friend George, and I'm just lighting a candle of joy for having found this this congregation and this welcoming time this morning. Thank you.
I light that candle in the hope that, or pray that the world can not become apathetic and self-interested and can stay the course.
For all those joys and sorrows here spoken, and those that remain silently in our hearts. Please join with me as we sing our next hymn, this time in the Green Book, number 42, Frank Claiborne's A Dream of Widening Love, hymn number 42. Our second reading comes from the columnist Mary Schmitz, and it's something she wrote back in 1997, which you'll hear a reference to the class of 97. It's not the full column, it's about half of it. But I do hope you appreciate it just as much as I have. Inside every adult lurks a graduation speaker dying to get out. Some world-weary pundit eager to pontificate on life to young people who'd rather be rollerblading. Most of us, alas, will never be invited to sow our words of wisdom among an audience of caps and gowns. But there's no reason we can't entertain ourselves by composing a guide to life for graduates. I encourage anyone over 26 to try this, and thank you for indulging my attempt. Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 97, wear sunscreen. If I could offer you only one tip for the future, sunscreen would be it. The long-term benefits of sunscreen have been proved by scientists, whereas the rest of my advice has no more basis than my own meandering experience. I will dispense this advice now. Enjoy the power and beauty of your youth. Oh, never mind, you will not understand the power and beauty of your youth until they've faded. But trust me, in 20 years, you'll look back at photos of yourself and recall in a way you can't grasp now how much possibility lay before you and how fabulous you really looked. You are not as fat as you imagine. Don't worry about the future. Or worry, but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum. The real troubles in your life are apt to be things that never crossed your worried mind, the kind that blindside you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday. Do one thing every day that scares you. Sing. Don't be reckless with other people's hearts. Don't put up with people who are reckless with yours. Floss. Don't waste your time on jealousy. Sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. The race is long and in the end it's only with yourself. Remember compliments you receive. Forget the insults. If you succeed in doing this, tell me how. Keep your old love letters. Throw away your old bank statements. Stretch. Don't feel guilty if you don't know what you want to do with your life. The most interesting people I know didn't know at 22 what they wanted to do with their lives. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't. Get plenty of calcium. Be kind to your knees. You'll miss them when they're gone. A few words of advice from Mary Schmitz. Let us return now to a time of prayer with these words written by the Terma Collective. May our eyes remain open even in the face of tragedy. May we not become disheartened. May we find in the dissolution of our apathy and denial the cup of the broken heart. May we discover the gift of the fire burning in the inner chamber of our being, burning great and bright enough to transform any poison. May we offer the power of our sorrow to the service of something greater than ourselves. May our guilt not rise up to form yet another defensive wall. May the suffering purify and not paralyze us. May we endure. May sorrow bond us and not separate us. May we realize the greatness of our sorrow and not run from its touch or its flame. May clarity be our ally,
and wisdom our support. May our wrath be cleansing, cutting through the confusion of denial and greed. May we not be afraid to see or speak our truth. May the bleakness of the wasteland be dispelled. May the soul's journey be revealed and the true hunger fed. May we be forgiven for what we have forgotten, and blessed with the remembrance of who we really are. Amen. And so we enter into a period of silence for reflection, meditation, contemplation, and personal prayer. We turn now to our next hymn in the Green Book, number 184, Lucy Larcombe's The Best Things. I Learned It on the Meadow Path, hymn number 184. I wanted to show how a number of ideas that today we consider false actually change the world, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, and how, in the best instances, false beliefs and discoveries, totally without credibility, could then lead to the discovery of something true, or at least something we consider true today. In the field of the sciences, this mechanism is known as serendipity. An excellent example of it is given us by Columbus, who, believing he could reach the Indies by sailing westward, actually discovered America, which he had not intended to discover. Those words form part of the introduction to Umberto Eco's book, Serendipities. I read from Eco a few weeks ago, and his words again seem apt in my mind. So my apologies for those who felt you had your fill of the wonderful writer. Serendipities is a fascinating and well-researched exploration of history, of religion, and of science, truth, and perception. And as he points out, this story of Columbus easily explains the idea and the concept of serendipity. Eco actually explores this story of Columbus even further, which really drives home the concept. He points out that the conventional story which is the one I think most of us sort of grew up with, the notion that everyone thought the world was flat, except for that brilliant genius who was Columbus, that story itself is actually a fiction, largely thanks to the American writer Washington Irving. In fact, much of Europe understood not only that the world was round, but had for their day, accurate calculations of its size. This was why the journey to the Indies had not been attempted prior to Columbus. Everyone knew the size of the world and understood that the ocean was too large for such an expedition. Eco asks, why then did Columbus decide to head westward to reach the east? It's in fact because he was a poor mathematician. He actually did the calculations for the size of the earth wrong, and he thought that the world was much smaller than everyone else who, as I said, had the accurate understanding of the size of the world. And so it was with this inflated sense of confidence that he headed across the Atlantic. The serendipity in this is that in the end, the only thing that stood between him and India were the Americas. And he would not have ventured forth had his sums been correct. This sense of two wrongs coming together to produce a right is what Eco means by serendipity. With this heat and the brilliant weather we've had recently, I was reminded of another, perhaps smaller serendipity. People in my generation, certainly in the in the U.S., would not have heard today's second reading and recognize it as the words of Mary Schmitz. This litany of advice, beginning with that maxim to wear sunscreen, as you heard, was written in 1997. It was written in a newspaper column by a woman who had never expected to give a graduation commencement address, but she felt possessed some wisdom worth imparting. I only read a portion of the letter, but I do encourage you to read the whole article, as there's some beautiful sentiments that still ring true 25 years later. Soon after the article was published, people began to sing its praises, almost literally, because there was a recording with a backing track made that was copied and passed around via cassette. It possessed a viral quality before the word viral meant that. The invocation to wear sunscreen was recited in school hallways around the U.S., including Flushing High School, where my brother was a member of that aforementioned class of 1997. He came home with a copy of the recording, extolling its wisdom and humor. He played it for us, and he informed us, as he had been informed, that it was a recording by Kurt Vonnegut, if you recall those words at the start of our worship. It was a recording of Kurt Vonnegut giving a commencement address. This mistake was not made out of malice, and nor would I even necessarily argue it being one of ignorance. He had been told by others, who in turn had been told by others, and down the line, much like chain letters of their day, imagining the actual progenitor of the lie may be quite difficult. There was no reason for anyone to disbelieve this being the voice of Vonnegut, though I don't know if anyone actually sourced a recording of Vonnegut to compare the two. Nor was there at the time the infrastructure of the internet, which, despite the slew of information we have today, does still have the capacity to correct our errors from time to time, and provided the information for today, for instance. So the recording was certainly not Schmitz, nor was it Vonnegut. So who was it? Well, it turned out to be the brainchild of Baz Luhrmann, the noted director. He introduced a remixed piece into the background, and he had the Australian actor Lee Perry record the speech. Although they had received permission from Schmitz, the attribution to Vonnegut had already been floating around, and thus it continued. Mary Schmitz was honored that her writing could be mistaken for Kurt Vonnegut. And equally, Vonnegut was honored that such words might be attributed to him. I imagine that without this false attribution, the wisdom of Schmitz would sadly not have traveled as far. And so it is because of these mistakes that the serendipity, that of some wisdom dressed in humor, could make it around the world. Lerman's recording made it to number 1 in the charts here, for instance. Now, we work to correct that legacy. In his book on the subject, Eco continues, the concept of serendipity can be broadened. A mistaken project does not always lead to something correct. Often, a project that the author believed right seems to us unrealizable. But for this very reason, we understand why something else was right. And he explores the myriad stories in history when misinformation has actually led to violence, to destruction, to a shifting and changing of the world's order. The Prester John letters that led to the Crusades. Part of Eco's argument is that history is not nearly as progressive and unidirectional as we think. It's perhaps a bitter pill, but there are setbacks, there are ebbs and flows, and there are serendipities. And chance and error play more of a role in the direction of social movement than we are usually willing to give them credit. Seeing the news from the US this week on abortion and gun safety, seeing the news of an attack at Oslo's Pride March, we can palpably feel this shift in the world's direction, or at least in our world's direction. Unitarians used to hold in their affirmation the expression, the progress of mankind, and pardon the gendered writing, onward and upward forever. It's an expression that we say now with perhaps a bit of mirth, imagining a certain naivete by those who coined and continued the phrase. Nowadays, we are likely to reflect on the challenges of living our faith writ large, seeing policy and even society pitching away from our professed values. The stability of human rights is far from assured, and our values of freedom, reason, and respect are not as highly valued as we may wish. Perhaps we can regain our course without too much time lost. But to prepare, we must understand the strength that we each individually possess. So when you are encouraged to wear sunscreen, let this little story of serendipity come to mind. Remind yourself that there may be hidden blessings amongst the roughest waters of our years, that some truth about the goodness and strength of people may come through their response to society's adversities. Our ship may tack away from the promised land of love and justice, but we are not without a rudder. And our single candle can still contribute to lighting the darkness. We can still comfort those who are grieving and feed those who are hungry. Amen. A few notices before we sing our final hymn. There is a tea and coffee in the Percival Suite after the service, so please do join us if you're here in person. Do we have anyone to help with the tea and coffee? Thank you, Alvin. Alvin and Ann, if both of you wish to help. If you're in need of pastoral care, please write to me at minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk or speak with me after the service if you wish. We have a volunteer list if you wish to sign up for greeting, for reading, for providing flowers, or assisting with the IT. How has the IT gone today? Fine, thumbs up. So we make it as user-friendly as possible, so even if you aren't a technophile, do consider volunteering in that capacity as well. I'm like I've said before, I'm grateful for all the care and help that chapel volunteers and members provide. We're grateful as well for any donations. You can donate online at tinyurl.com/crossstreetdonate, or you can write to me about setting up a standing order. And if you're here in person, we have a retiring collection along with envelopes available if you are a UK taxpayer to contribute gift aid. And we have an envelope scheme as well if you are a regular contributor to the chapel and wish to, rather than setting up a standing order, wish to actually have sort of a physical item that you can give, because I appreciate that's something that can feel very important for people. I don't have the date for it, but we do have a lunchtime recital in July. It will be the, let me try and do my math. 20, oh, thank you. Yes, it's in the back of your order of worship. Thank you. Tenor and pianist going to perform for us. Our recitals are free to attend, 1 p.m. the final Friday of the month. Always fantastic. And we're grateful as well for any donations that go to the musicians to recognize the time, talent, and energy that they contribute. And then also on the 24th of July, we have our 350th-ish anniversary. Please do join us for that. We have a catered meal afterwards. At Sunday, the 24th of July at 10:45. Are there any other, there's Faith in Life as well today after the service, 12:30 to 2. It's a chance for us to explore our lives, both the mundane and hard-hitting elements in our lives, and what spiritual meanings we may glean from them. Are there any other announcements? Let us then sing our final hymn, number 11, in the Purple Book. Blessed Spirit of my life, hymn number 11.
IT. Thank you, Sonia and Robin, for the flowers, for helping to set up, and for greeting. Thank you to Alvin and Anne for the tea and coffee. And thank you to all of you for creating and sharing worship today. We close with the words of Theodore Parker. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, works of love. Its profession of faith, divine living. Amen.
Amen.